News and views from the best voices in our game. Subscribe to the Cricket News YouTube channel and press the bell icon for unparalleled cricket coverage.
Well. I cannot digest this, and no, I'm not talking about the lunch that I just had, which in a way was a lot more than I usually eat, but that's nowhere near this World Cup. What a tournament it has been. And I mean, just look at what has happened since the last time we recorded pod, since the last time Abhishek and I conversated on this pod. Australia have won 3 more games at this World Cup, which is as much as they did when we recorded last time. England have come back into the mix of things and are now very much in this tournament, especially after that bonkers of a game against hosts, which they won by 1 wicket. That wasn't the only upset for New Zealand, however, as South Africa beat them. Just another final over finish. Nothing more unique about that as far as this tournament is concerned. And speaking of final over finishes, we had Bangladesh losing against West Indies. We had Bet Mooney take Australia past the finishing line against India in only the final over. Pakistan completed a tricky chase against West Indies, which was their first World Cup win after 18 games in 13 years. And then we had Australia end the winning streak of South Africa, only to show off a streak of their own. I have missed quite a lot there, and that is exactly why we need to speak so much about this tournament, a once-in-a-lifetime tournament. And so I thought it would only be right to have 2 ingenious cricket brains to help us decipher what has happened so far in the tournament. Joining me are Ananya, Upendran, and Abhishek Mukherjee. I'm Rahul Pandey, and welcome to the Cricket News Podcast, Season 5, Episode 4. Hello to both of you. That was a long intro, but I'm sorry, that's just how the tournament is operating right now. How has it been for the two of you, especially this last week? Ananya is just going to gesture. Okay. That's just
I'm asking him to go ahead.
No, yes.
Yeah, none of the teams are out of the hunt yet, right? Even Pakistan can qualify. So that's where we are.
After 20
most teams have played 5 or 6 matches, and no team has yet been eliminated. So that's the story, I suppose.
Yep. Ananya?
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly like he said. I think this is probably the first tournament that I can think of where 22 games have finished and we still are not sure who's going to qualify. No one's eliminated, so there's no dead rubber as such. So yeah, I think it's been like an extremely exciting tournament, and just a tournament that's continued to show why I think women's cricket is such a great product and it just needs to be more investment in it.
Yeah. Except Australia, of course, which is a different team altogether. We won't talk about them right now. But yeah, we spoke about what a great product women's cricket is going forward as well in that first episode that we did to kick off this season. But just in general, I was thinking, we had this debate. We have this debate every now and then when ODIs take place, especially in men's game, that, this is the format that might not last when it comes to the future. But how about this tournament, this kind of a tournament to promote the format? I mean, it's just been incredible, hasn't it been, for as far as the format is concerned and its future is concerned?
Yeah, it definitely has. I don't think women's cricket, because women play exclusively white ball cricket, there is the odd test smattered in here and there once in 2 years, I guess. But I don't think ODI cricket is irrelevant for the women because it's just, I guess, an extension of T20 cricket. And it's just, like you said, I think the tournament's just been such a good advertisement for it. And it just shows, like we were discussing in the very first episode, that there isn't much kind of separating these teams, apart from Australia, who are, of course, miles ahead of everyone else. There isn't much, even, Bangladesh has surprised all of us, I think, in the way they've pushed every single team that they've played against. So I think it's because of the level of competition, the tournament's just been so much fun to watch. And I think like you said, a great advertisement for ODI cricket, and definitely a format that has a future, at least in women's cricket.
Yeah, yeah. I certainly hope, given the backdrop, and we have to talk about your backdrop, which we did in the first episode as well, that the finale doesn't disappoint as far as the entirety of the series is concerned. So I hope the finale is worthy of this tournament. But yeah, Abhishek da,
Very unlikely.
why do you keep bringing me to reality when I have to wander around the world of fiction every now and then? Why do you keep bringing me back to this realm?
See, a knockout match involving Australia is seldom a close match. Seldom, very
Yeah,
rare.
but what we can do is kind of rewind to 2017, since that's what all Indians love to do, and say there was
Yes.
that one knockout game. Someone has to play out of their skin. But because we're
At
Indian,
least,
because we must be optimistic, we will say 2017.
at least you mentioned 2017. I straight went back to the 2000 final.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
I mean, we just had an India Australia game where the build up was all about this Harmanpreet Kaur innings, this once in a lifetime innings. And in came Alyssa Haley and reminded us of 2020. What a fantastic day it was.
see,
But
that
yeah,
Harmanpreet Kaur innings is not going to happen again. I mean, it happened. We were fortunate enough to see that. We are not going to see anything like that. That happens in, say, maybe 20 years, 30 years. Because that kind of attack
yeah.
in that stage. I mean, it doesn't happen every day. Every time India and Australia meet, that won't happen. This is what is likely to happen.
All right. Well, if we are to come to this realm, the reality world, let's just talk about the team that they are. Australia now have won all the games that they have played, just like they did last week, and keep on winning them. And when we talk about their performance, too many names, there's just too many names to discuss. But let's just start with their batting order, right? You have the world number one, Alyssa Healy, opening alongside the highest run scorer in the tournament, Chileans. And if you get them out, if you are, able enough to get them out, then you have Meg Lanning, who has a 97 and 100 in the last two games that she has played. Also, the captain of this team. If you get her out, of course, if you don't need to get her out, if you've already gotten the first two wickets, Elise Perry comes in, who is giving the captain a shoulder-to-shoulder competition in winning the most player of the matches awards in this tournament so far. And if you get the two of them out, or either one of them out, you get Beth Mooney, as India did, and as she did against India, finished that game off. Just these five players are too much for one team. Why would you have superstars beyond them? Why would you have Atalia Megra, Ashley Garner, Jess Jonathan, Alana King, Megan Scoot after them to just show your superiority in every single department? I mean, is one lifetime enough to talk about this Australia team?
They're just bullying other sides, and that's unfair.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we need a principal here. We need a
Yeah.
principal in this school. It's all going haywire. What's happening, Ananya? Can't we have a principal right now? Can't we complain like we also do in Indian schools? A lot. I did.
Who are we going to? Who's going to be the principal who we complain to?
That's a good question.
And also, this will go. I will go on a completely different tangent, but it's not like other boards don't have the resources that Australia have, that Australia are using. There are other boards that have way more resources and potentially way more talent and skill and all that stuff. But it's just about one team's, I guess, using what they have very well, and they've run away with it. They're not. I don't think they have an unfair advantage over anyone. So this is just a student who's doing everything right, and therefore passing with flying colors, whereas we're all kind of just scrapping around them, trying really hard to keep up without actually doing the work. So even if you have a principal, what are your complaints going to be?
Wow. Yeah, that's just about nudging it in the right direction. But Abhishek, da, we also spoke about Australia last time around, and you you did say that South Africa, given the run that they had, are going to find it difficult to face, face off Australia. Anyone's going to find it difficult to face off Australia. India came pretty close. That was a good challenge. That was a good contest that they gave to that Australian team, but just too much firepower to not win a match.
See, the only probably the only time in the in the India match where it seemed India may win was after the 49th over got over. Okay, so it's 8 from the last over, maybe then the first ball she hits for 4 and it's gone.
Yeah, but it was a
We
good
knew that.
good time to
At
sort
least
of have that feeling.
yeah, yeah.
I think
But
the
how
only
many
the
of
only
us really thought that that she would she would prevent them from scoring 8 runs in that over with so many wickets in hand?
Yeah, I think the only thing that went to or the only positive that we can take out of it is just that it followed the trend of the tournament and went to the last over, but it just
Yeah,
never looked like Australia would lose. So yeah, we can say in theory we pushed them close, but in reality, yeah, there was no way they
yeah.
were losing it.
The margin flattered India.
See, I was hopeful. I was really hopeful. And I was actually not at home. I was traveling from Rajasthan to Delhi. And then I remember all of a sudden, with my laptop where I'm watching the match, I have my mobile phone where I'm scrolling through that Bird app, where I saw this one fine gentleman saying that India need to take all the wickets. They can't win it at any other cost. And that was, of course, the gentleman who's joined us on this pod. So thank you so much, Abhishek Da, for killing my hope right in the middle of that whole situation, as you always have done, brought me back into reality once again. But yeah, I mean, Australia are in a position where it's hard to say that they are not going to go all the way. It's going to be a huge surprise now that they don't win the next three games, the next three possible games. Um, what do you factor in as a spot which, if any at all, which any other team can utilize to their advantage against this Australia side? Is there any blink of a hope for any other side to do that?
The last time it happened, it took an upset. Basically, what we call an upset, what we call a once in a
A
lifetime
genuine
inning,
upset. Yeah.
that is what it took. And even then, I mean, remember the last wicket partnership. It's never
Yeah.
over until you bowl them out.
True.
Yeah.
Well, that is true. But let's also quickly come on to, because we have a lot to talk about throughout this episode. Let's quickly talk about the team that they faced today, uh, South Africa. I think, given the resources that they've had, they couldn't have been counted out as one of the favorites. They were there as favorites in all the lists that came before the tournament, even though they were missing their captain going into the tournament. But even then, they have had good enough firepower in batting and bowling department. And I do have this thought, which is thinking too far off. But South Africa have their two games against West Indies and India, and they win one. They have 10 points. They essentially cannot be then overtaken from that second spot. They will then not face Australia in that semi-final. They'll face someone else. They will then face Australia in a final. And as Ananya said, we as Indians like to talk about 2017. I'll talk about 2017 hell. And come a World Cup final, you can never consider yourself as winners throughout that game at
See,
any
you
cost. But
asked
yes, South Africa, I mean,
you
have
asked
a good team.
how to beat Australia. The best strategy would be to finish second or third and
Yeah.
expect the fourth ranked team to beat Australia in the semi-final.
Oh, come on. Well, I was half agreeing to you by saying, anything can happen in the final, and then you sort of. But that's a good one. We can add it as a quote. Ananya, do you think this genuine be second on the points table and then expect the final to do, some script turn is a good way to expect that you can win the World Cup.
Well, I think it's the only realistic. I mean, like I feel like a semi-final is a bigger game than a final because there is so much more riding on it because you have that ultimate prize of kind of getting into the final. So yeah, for South Africa, it will be finish second, like win one of the remaining two games, finish second, and then find your way into the final, and then hope to God, because Marizan Cup has had an amazing time in domestic in league tournaments in the final, that she just turns up at the World Cup final and finds that same big game Marizan Cup, who gets like maybe like 3 or 4 wickets in her first spell, because like Abhishek said, that's the only way. I mean, you can only beat Australia if you bowl them out. South Africa have two or the three best seamers in the competition as a group. The issue is that they don't have good backup bowlers. So those three seamers have to have the game of their life in the final, and that's the only way that South Africa, or who I mean, yeah, that South Africa will beat Australia if they get to a final. So yeah, you hope that they finish second, they get into that final, and then Ismail, Karp, and Kaka kind of just go berserk.
Yeah.
They're really missing Van Neker, because I'll tell you why. Not because just of the captaincy, because she could have come into the side purely as a batter or a bowler. So it is very difficult to find the balance in a side once a player like that misses the tournament. So they could have compromised on both bowling or on either batting or bowling. This decided to compromise on batting, which is they decided to push Cap up the order. So yeah, I mean at some point it will catch up with them. This one playing one batter less, this will catch up with them.
Especially against a team like Australia. But
I
yeah,
was referring to India. They play India before that.
oh yeah, they do play the
Yeah, but
last league stage game.
I think they will also see that India, hopefully, I mean, they'll see the West Indies game as the bigger game. They'll want to win that, and then they'll see India as a free hit.
Yes, and rest
So
their key players.
maybe.
That's again being too optimistic of it. Yeah,
No,
that's too
why?
much.
They'll be finishing second anyway. So what is in it for them?
I don't think they'll want to beat. They won't want to face India in a semi-final. So they'll kind of want to make sure that they don't finish third.
If they beat India, they may have to face England in the semi-final.
Which I think
England
they'll
may
be
then jump
okay
past
with.
India. Yeah.
So no, I would want you to complete that. And yeah, which team would South Africa be more sort of comfortable facing in that semi-final?
Oh God, I think I'm gonna shoot my foot off. I think they will probably want to face England more than India, simply because I think India have more match winners on paper. You look at that batting lineup of Mandana, Burma, Kaur, and those are three genuine match winners who can, if they go berserk, then no one can stop them. And if you look at England, I mean, like Nat Silver is probably the only batter there who can take the game away from you, and maybe Danny Wyatt. But if they continue to open with Wyatt, I don't see her being a game changer. So yeah, I think they'd rather face England in a semi-final. But then again, England have more people who are experienced in high-pressure games, and England seem to be kind of peaking at the right time.
Yeah.
Whereas South Africa, it does seem like they could potentially just slide down. So yeah, I don't know. It's a difficult one. I'd say Lizelle Lee and Laura Wolfart would rather face India. I think the rest of them would rather face England.
This Brits experiment, I'm not still not. Uh, I'm not sure why they do this. Probably because they want to absorb as much of pace bowlers as possible because they're playing a batter less. So I'm not sure whether they'll stick to that against, say, India, because they have seen what it is like to attack India from the start. They have seen Australia do that. They may change that. I'm not sure what they are going to do.
I think with Brits, it's also a case of, she's a better fielder than Lara Goodall. So she saves you runs in the deep, has a better arm. And what she did show in that home series against Pakistan and to a certain extent when she batted in the West Indies was that she has the big shots. It's just, I think she needs pace on the ball. And for some reason, she hasn't been able to showcase what she did at home against Pakistan. I think she's a better player of seam than spin, but I don't think she's a good player of swing. And which is why I think a lot of teams have kind of taught her, found her out. And I hope South Africa kind of just stick with Lara Goodall because, she also provides the option of a left-hander. So, and what we saw against Australia, she was a lot more proactive. She seems to have worked a lot on her technique. So, even if she, like Dane van Niekerk has constantly said over these last couple of weeks, is that even if she gets a quick fire 20, it'll help the rest of the lineup. They don't want her to stay and get a 50. What they need is just for her to keep that momentum going. So I'm hoping they stick with Goodall for me, best case scenario would be Sunil Lees bats at 3 because she's in very, very good form. But then I think the rest of the lineup looks very shallow.
Yeah, Dane Van Niekerk is probably more aggressive than, at least as aggressive as any captain around. Yeah. If there is a risk gamble to be taken, she will. But I'm not sure whether Lewis will do the same. I really miss her. Her presence can change the entire course of a match.
Yeah, that's what good leaders are essentially about. They understand the nerves of their teams and the kind of good spots and how to utilize them in pressure games. Let's now quickly jump on to the team that's number 3 in the points table that we have already mentioned about in our conversations here and there, but let's talk about them in full flow. Of course, India won 3, lost 3 games, have a very good net run rate of. They had a good net run rate jump winning this game as well. The net run rate currently being plus of 0.762, 768, beg your pardon. Have won all 3 of their games with a 100 plus margin, but then it would, however, seem that they've maybe lost a game more in the league stage going into that final one against South Africa. How do you assess their performance this week, especially in the last 2 games against Australia and in this one against Bangladesh?
I won't say all 6 results were expected, but I would say none of the 6 results was unexpected.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we said this at the very beginning that with India you expect the unexpected. I think they've been woeful or they've been brilliant. There's no middle ground with India. And yeah, I think that's been their major issue. They don't know how to play average cricket, and I think that's what's really hurt them through the.
I do believe that's a good thing. That they don't know how to be average. It can be very good or very bad, but that's good.
That's not very good when you have fans who are so volatile.
Oh yeah. Speaking of fans, Abhishek had a pretty interesting analogy just the other day on that Bird app regarding the fans of women's game in general.
What?
I'm not going to put you on the tough spot here. If you have something to say on that, you can. Otherwise, we'll just move on in the episode.
At least on social media, women's cricket fans are less toxic than cricket fans who do not follow women's cricket. That is a general observation.
Let's not go too deep into this. Otherwise, this pod will turn into something else. Right. But Yastika Bhatia has been someone who I mean, I say this given her interview after the match today when she said that, even though I would have wanted to score more, even though she was the highest run scorer in the match, even though she was the player of the match. She is, of course, has expressed that she likes to play the role of holding an innings together. And that sort of seems really good, especially when the pitches are tricky, especially when spinners have something on those surfaces. Uh, but yeah, your general observation about her game and the kind of hunger she has for scoring runs and the performances at three at that spot.
The big score has not come yet, but I'm sure it will.
Next
Yeah, I
game,
think
a very good opportunity.
Yes, please, next game.
well, it is against an attack that will likely feed her pull shot. It's a shot that she plays well. It's a shot that she also gets out to. But I honestly think that the next game will probably be her biggest challenge in terms of three seamers with varied skill. And if India lose one quickly, she'll come up against, I think, having observed her score runs, I'm sure the South Africans will come in with very clear plans to her. And I think the other thing with Yastika is she will be very hungry to do well against them because she, earned her maiden call up for the series against South Africa, never played, and just watched India get demolished by that side. So I think she will be hungry to kind of prove her worth against them and just kind of say, hey, maybe I should have played then, maybe it would have been different. But
Abhishek, you said last time around that you wouldn't really look forward to that 2021 series in terms of analyzing the Indian side play against South Africa because of the gap, the gap
Yeah, they were playing
that
after a
happened.
year,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and
But
South
how?
Africa were playing at that
Yeah,
point. They were
how
just
different do you see this team from that team in terms of just the experience they have, just the flow that they have right now going into that last
this
match?
team is very random. I mean, you don't know. I mean, there's a cliche commentators and headline writers often use which India will show up.
Yeah.
So that is what sums up this team. They can end. They have ended Australia's streak. The same team that has scored, I think, a handful of times they have crossed 250 against the major sides. And now in Australia, they did it twice. In the New Zealand series, they did it probably thrice. Here also, they did it once. And then they get bowled out for 134. I mean, I don't know how to predict or what to say. They can win or lose against any opposition except Australia.
Yeah, that's a good thought to hold for now. But yeah, we would certainly hope that final game is good for India. We certainly can use that good game for good vibes. But yeah, coming on to the team that is currently at fourth, shares the same number of points as India do, not so much the net run rate. West Indies started off this tournament with a bang, some bang, winning against New Zealand, winning against England. Almost won, no, not almost. I'm going to say they started off that innings against India with a bang, were 91 without loss after 11.2 overs, something. Yeah. But then they lose that match and they now find themselves in a tricky spot. The last match was, of course, the overs were reduced from 50 to 20. It was a 20-over game, and it was a tricky surface to bat on. The Pakistan bowlers did well, the Pakistan fielders did well, and that was quite the win for them. But the West Indies would also perhaps think they have lost a game more going into the position that they are right now and have to face South Africa in that final fixture.
Not just any game mode. They just had they beaten Pakistan, they would have been through. That's it.
Yeah.
yeah, I feel like that game losing to Pakistan is probably just the tipping point where you know now that West Indies is probably going to fade out. I think just the poor returns with the bat finally caught up with them against Pakistan. I don't think, aside from that Haley Matthews knock in the first game and then the opening partnership against India, Shemaine Campbell kind of getting them out of jail with a couple of gritty knocks. I don't think their batting has fired at all through the tournament, and they've just kind of gotten out of jail against every team. It's just been moments of brilliance that have gotten them those 3 wins that they did get. So I feel like they've reached a tipping point where they're probably going to bow out of the tournament. I don't want to say that because I really, really like the way they've kind of, I guess, made everyone lift their games. But yeah, I don't see them qualifying for this.
And of the 3 wins, they should ideally have lost. I mean, had this been a slightly more experienced team, Bangladesh would have beaten them.
Yep. That was quite the game. Perhaps in some other alternate universe, Bangladesh have won it, and West Indies are looking in even more trouble. Perhaps in some other universe, West Indies have qualified for the Final Four, but not in this one.
I would really like to see a long bilateral, maybe 5-match series between West Indies and Bangladesh.
Do you think this kind of a tournament is going to promote more of these bilateral series going forward? Of course, what we saw from last tournament,
bilateral series are all that happen.
No, what I mean to say is what Ananya said when we first conversated about these bilateral series is that the interest of viewers, just the fan bases, from that last World Cup to this one increased as far as those bilateral series are concerned. The talking, the people talking about those bilateral series, the numbers sort of increase. How do you see that going forward with this World Cup, which has been, dare I say, been better?
Huge. Ananya, where were the India-South Africa matches held? Surat. I mean, not the last year's, the 2019.
Yeah, 2019, Surat and Baroda.
Yeah, the grounds were full. The crowd was terrific. So I'm sure the last year's matches were probably played behind closed doors, the Lucknow ones. So now, if there is an international series, India plays a bilateral series at home, I'm sure there will be crowd.
Well,
now, I think the highest we have seen on the live, this is just on the app, is 7 lakh concurrent. That is
the India-Australia one.
I think during India-South Africa, that is going to be a crunch match. It may hit, if it hits the 10 lakh mark, that will be huge. Remember, this does not include television.
Yeah.
This is just the app.
Yeah, we'll have to wait for the final numbers that are revealed sometime later about these fixtures. But yeah, we do hope the turnout and the viewership is going to be even more. And even before moving on to the next team, even with the India-New Zealand, beg your pardon, that India-Australia match, despite the crowd restrictions, we had a good turnout. There was quite the buzz around that match as well at Eden Park. We had a good crowd, and certainly hope that more and more people draw towards the sport going forward, this tournament going forward. England at 5 after 5 games with a couple of wins in their last 2 ones. Is that right? Yeah.
And they have 2 relatively easy matches left.
Oh yeah,
Bangladesh and Pakistan. So they are probably likelier to qualify than West Indies.
Did they thought this over? Were they thinking about this?
And even India.
Yeah.
India have to beat South Africa. England have to beat Bangladesh and Pakistan. So England are in a better position than India.
That hurts. That straight up hurts, because what we essentially thought going before the tournament, again, Ananya pointed to this, they'll get that Australia game out of the way, right? And they'll feel good about it. Now they just focus on the remaining says. Lost another couple and now have 2 very easy games, might as well qualify. But what do you see as a reason possible for all the results that have happened? The last 2 ones are, of course, kind of difficult to explain. Close matches are difficult to explain, but the ones before where England faltered, what do you see as the real possible reasons as to how they can be positive now that they can do good in the tournament and sort of push a cloth over all those holes that they saw early in the tournament?
I think they already have in many ways. I mean, they're seeing every game in isolation now because, I mean, after that loss, I think it was to South Africa. Every game essentially became a must-win for them. There was no possibility of them. I mean, the qualification would have been out of their hands if they lost against India. And I think since that game against South Africa, they kind of said, okay, that bit of the tournament is done. And we kind of have to find another gear. And I mean, they've found ways to win games. They've also almost found a way to lose another game against New Zealand. I mean, that shouldn't have gone to the last wicket. It shouldn't have gone as deep as it did. But it did, and again, they somehow found a way to win it. So I think it will give them confidence, kind of. And I think it was the same with South Africa, that they're not playing their best cricket, but they're still somehow finding a way to win. And so you just feel like if a couple more things kind of go in your favor, then the ball will start rolling and you'll feel more confident. So I think just coming up against teams like Pakistan and Bangladesh, I know Bangladesh have definitely punched above their weight through this tournament, and I know England will be wary of both those teams, but they will also know that they probably have they can afford to make those mistakes and still come out on the winning side. But they'll just be hoping that they don't make that many mistakes, and it's probably a better opportunity for them to kind of get that ball rolling and get into the semi-final with a lot more confidence.
Yeah, just the fact that Kate Cross mentioned this, I guess, after that New Zealand win, that just the fact that someone like Anya Shrubsole bats at 11 gives the squad a whole lot of confidence going forward, that even with situations that seem too tense, they can go through them, especially at times when they need to go through those situations in order to qualify. But yeah, they have 2 games remaining, whilst on the other hand, the team that they got past in quite a close game have just a match in hand. We're talking about the hosts. New Zealand started off with a loss against West Indies. Have only been able to register 2 victories. One of them, of course, came against India. But yeah, how good are their chances looking right now? Abhishek, I'm going to start with you.
Unlikely, but they're theoretically in.
Theoretically, okay.
Yeah, I think they're just too dependent on I guess the stars aligning for them to make that semi. I mean, it would be wonderful if they did, but yeah, I think too many things went wrong for them.
Yeah, and given that, and given the build-up that was going into the tournament, the way they beat India, and everyone just started looking at their notes, at their top 4 predictions, wanted to make a change. Perhaps maybe let's put them as one of the main contenders, not looking the same as of now, and 2 more
See,
teams.
ahead of that series, India's tour, the Indians were not playing competitive cricket for 2 months, 2 months, maybe more, 3 months, I think, or maybe 2 months. New Zealand were playing a full domestic season. So I think the 4-1 result probably is one win too many. Was one win too many for New Zealand. It could have been 3-2. I mean, the 4-1 result prompted a lot of people to change their opinions. I know, but it's probably close. It was closer than there were several close matches on that series.
Yeah.
So it could have
And I
been
think, yeah, and I think New Zealand will also probably look back on that first game and against the West Indies, and I think playing Fran Jonas was one of the bigger mistakes that they made. I think Frankie McKay should have been in their starting 11 from the very first game, and I think they just got a lot of those. I wouldn't call them 50-50 decisions, but those close calls, I think they got a lot of them wrong. And then, against England, it was two of their big stars got, injured, and a lot of things kind of, I guess, went against them. But I think that one decision of just because a matchup suited them on paper, they played, I think, a bowler who probably shouldn't have featured in this tournament. And I know you can't blame one selection or one thing on them losing, but I feel like that probably kind of started the ball rolling in a direction that they didn't want.
Yeah, definitely. Moving forward, we have the two teams left that have just one win in their hand after 5 matches: Bangladesh and Pakistan. Bangladesh, of course, going to the first World Cup, got that win. Pakistan got that World Cup win after too long a time, which was rightly celebrated. I don't really see debates on this topic as to why a team should celebrate one win so big. I think it's a win, it's a World Cup win, and a team has waited for too long a time to do that. Might as well celebrate it the way they want to. But yeah, they
There
have
was
two
a
tough
debate
matches.
over this.
Yeah, on social media.
I don't know
Not so
why.
much a debate, but statements being passed on as to why are they celebrating it as if they won the World Cup, or as if they've qualified. Yeah, I
What
don't see a point in that, because I, for one, lost too many games throughout my childhood in all the sporting competitions I took part in. And I celebrated them like anything. And this is the World Cup we're talking about. I mean, you have all the right reasons to celebrate a match win there. But yeah, they have two tough games now, both of them. Bangladesh face Australia and England. Pakistan face England and New Zealand. And you'd not give them a chance to make a big upset, even though theoretically they're still in this tournament right now, will you?
Bangladesh against England?
Yeah, but that win's not going to be necessarily for them, is it? It's going to help someone else.
No, for them. I mean, it will help them achieve nothing, but beating England, I mean,
Yeah,
will help
it's of
Bangladesh
course a
cricket,
big
of course,
result.
of course. But
Yes.
of the 4 matches, that is probably going to be the closest.
Ananya, you have any
So you don't
counteracting
think?
thoughts on that? Yeah.
Do you not think Pakistan will run New Zealand close? I mean, and I'm assuming Tahuhu will probably be ruled out. So do you not think Pakistan will run New Zealand close? I'm assuming.
The thing
Let's
is, thing about Pakistan is, if you score, basically, if you score 230, 240 against them, you generally win. So Bangladesh can still chase that kind of total down. I mean, can.
But then I'd say theoretically even Pakistan can.
Yeah, theoretically, even Pakistan can.
We're not able to reduce anything out or reduce any teams out. We haven't been able to do that. We've been recording this for what, 42 minutes. Haven't been able to single out any team that's going out.
No.
What a tournament.
Okay. Let's rule out Pakistan and Bangladesh. They will. New Zealand will. Bangladesh will push England. Pakistan will push New Zealand. So one of they may even win. I won't predict on that, but But we have seen things happen in this World Cup. So one of them will win, but that is not going to. That is obviously not going to be enough for them to qualify. But it will be a historic moment. That's fun. That's without
And
doubt.
it'll also hurt the other team or the other team's qualification.
Yeah.
They'll just be party poopers and knock someone else out.
Yeah.
Nice.
And it'll be, I think beating one of these teams, New Zealand or England, will be a huge boost to cricket. Should be a huge boost to cricket back in the countries. And Bangladesh playing their first World Cup.
But I saw that frame yesterday when Pakistan won their first match in World Cups after 13 years. There were a couple of small girls celebrating, waving around that flag. That was a sight I really wanted to hole into my eyes for the next 5 to 10 minutes because it's just such a big impact. I remember the first games, even though I didn't watch games on the ground, World Cup games on the ground, I haven't had that privilege yet. But when you watch these results, they leave a long impression on your heart. And surely a result here and there won't hurt the larger development of cricket in the countries, as you've said. But yeah, it's a wrap up time, almost wrap up time. Otherwise, our producer's gonna kill me. Let's just talk about the tough questions now. Who are going to be the final three? The final, I mean, one's already there. The final three to go into the final four. Ananya, we'll put you on the tough spot first, since you inaugurated season 5.
Okay. The remaining three, I think South Africa, England, and India. Actually, no. Wait. England and India.
That would have been like an Oscar-worthy stuff, Oscar Best Picture moment stuff. You sort of pushed England in that final four, and had you removed them from that list, that would have been something for the fans watching. But Abhishek, care to bring up a different list?
No, I'll do a Sarfaraz here.
Okay. Surprise finding a spot in the most random of cricket podcasts as far as his cricket career is concerned. But yeah, he'll be happy. He'll be happy to be associated with a tournament like this. Anyone will be happy to be associated with a tournament like this. I'm just happy watching this tournament. It's been a real pleasure talking cricket to both of you. And we will talk cricket more and more as the tournament progresses. Of course, the knockout stages come. We have that big episode that's going to come after the tournament is over, where we will talk about the moments, we'll talk about the winners, teams that disappointed, teams that didn't disappoint, all that sort of stuff. So in case you have watched the Cricket News or heard the Cricket News podcast for the first time, might as well subscribe to it, share it, and if you like it, just let YouTube know that you like it. Thank you so much for joining us, you two fabulous people. I hope you enjoy the cricket that's to come. I hope everyone enjoys the cricket that's to come. For more about cricket, stay tuned to Cricket News.